Welcome to Town Talks, the show where a panel of students from Oakland Public Schools talk to Oakland icons about all things Oakland. We are here to discuss our amazing town, from the glorious features to the issues we face. Our guest today is a 40-time Jeopardy champion, Amy Schneider. Welcome, Amy. We are honored to have you here at Edna Brewer Middle School. Now here's our host, Richie Nunez. Take it away, Richie.
Hey everyone, welcome, and I want to say a big welcome to Amy Schneider, to everyone listening at home, to the students here. Thank you so much for being present. Before we jump into our panel discussion today, Amy Schneider actually has prepared some slides for us. She's going to be introducing a little bit about herself. Amy, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
So I was born in Dayton, Ohio, a long time ago. It was a pretty great place to grow up in for myself. I was in a diverse neighborhood, and I had a college professor as a mom who really got me into learning at an early age, which turned out to be pretty important down the road. And one of the things that was really important to me as well was getting into theater. This is a picture of me playing Algernon and the importance of being earnest. This is somehow a good 20 years before I came out as trans, but it was definitely an important part of my life, and it's something that got me very comfortable with being on stage and speaking, which also turned out to be important. In college, I majored in computer science and got into programming. I love programming because it is creative. You start out with a blank page and do something, and it really teaches you to understand things. You know, a human being will come and say, this program needs to do such and such a thing, and there's all these unstated assumptions underneath it, and you have to figure out what they are because the computer never assumes anything. And so that was what it looked like I was going to be doing with my life. And then in 2009, I moved to Oakland. Came here visiting some people that were grad students at Berkeley, and just immediately decided to move here. Basically, like a year later, I was here and living here, and that is a decision I have never regretted. I really love it in Oakland. So it was about 2011 that I began questioning my gender identity. As you can see here, I was in a play, The Midsummer Night's Dream, and I was playing a character that at the end of the play is forced to, in this little play within the play, play a female role. So I was getting dressed up like a woman every day, and all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, what if I just did that? And really started thinking about what that might mean for me. So around 2016 to 2017, I actually came out as trans. It's, you know, always kind of a slow process that you can't really point to, but that was in 2017, June 30th, that was when I came out at work and began, like, you know, threw out all my boys' clothes and began living full-time as myself. 2020, I met Genevieve, who is now my fiance, and she's been really important in all of this. I don't know how I could have gone through everything I've gone through in the last 8 months or so without her, and she really taught me a lot about what healthy relationships are, and I'm looking forward to marrying her, and I didn't want her to go without mention. Last year, got on Jeopardy. It was something I'd been trying to do my whole life, and, you know, it finally happened, and I told everybody going in, I was like, I could win 3 or 4 games if things go my way, and obviously I did better than that. And so now I do this, whatever it is this is, you know. Obviously I did a ton of media, especially towards the end of the run on Jeopardy. And I now, you know, go around the country speaking at events. I've been to the White House. I'm going to the White House Correspondents' Dinner next week or so, and it's just been a life I never imagined. And so I'm still trying to adjust to it. People ask me how it feels, and I say I don't even know yet how it feels, because it's been a complete change in my life in just a few months. But it's exciting and it's fun, and I'm figuring it all out. And so that brings us to the present.
Amy, thank you so much for the introduction. We're going to be kicking off the panel discussion now. Before we start, just wanted to give that friendly reminder that we want this to be an open discussion. So students, please obviously ask those questions, and then Amy, feel free to ask questions back as well. Why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Hello, my name is Ramari. I'm in 9th grade. My question for you is, as somebody who studied engineering, what advice do you have for somebody just entering that field?
That's a good question. I think some of my advice is the same that I would give for almost any field, which is you need to you need to really enjoy it. You're going to be spending, a good chunk of your life doing whatever it is your career is. I started out in college majoring in civil engineering, and I was just sure that was what I wanted to do. I'd been planning on it since, 7th grade or so. And then I got into it, and I sort of interned on a construction project, and I realized I didn't actually like it at all. It wasn't sort of what I'd been imagining. So I think being very aware of that and not sort of going full speed at something that you've pre-decided on, be conscious of the fact that what you want to do may change over time. Other than that, it's just, just study hard, I guess. It's engineering is something where, depending on the type of it, especially something in the physical world where you have to get everything right every time, or, a bridge falls down or something like that. So, getting those habits of kind of thoroughness and diligence and, kind of perfectionism in a certain way is pretty important in that field.
Mevo, did you have a question you wanted to ask? You want to pass the microphone back to Mevo? Oh, she has it, okay.
Hi, my name is Mevo. I'm an 8th grader. So my question is that I know that in middle school you were voted most likely to go on Jeopardy. Since then, have you wanted to go on Jeopardy, or is there some other reason that inspired you to go on?
Yeah, I grew up watching it with my parents, like a lot of people. So it's, since I was a kid, it was just sort of always around in my life. And yeah, I think, I, especially as a younger kid, I was pretty cocky about things. I was just like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go on and be great. And, as you grow, some of that gets knocked out of you by the world and everything, but it was still always in the back of my mind. The only time I really thought that I wasn't going to be on was right when I transitioned. I was so, uneasy with myself and so, insecure in how I looked and how I presented and everything like that, that the thought of being on TV right then just seemed like it was something that I would never ever want to do. But then, a few years later, you get more settled in, you get used to yourself, and I was like, I'm not going to give up on this, dream. It had always been in my mind going to happen, and that there was, someday I was going to get on there. So I was never worried, I auditioned a bunch of times and didn't get on, but I was like, it'll happen. And, I guess I was right.
Hi, my name is Koyo, and I'm in 8th grade. And well, my question for you is, how do all the aspects of who you are, so how you liked engineering, how you like theater, and especially, Jeopardy, how did that shape you to be a better person in general, help you throughout your life, including Jeopardy? And then I'd also like to know how Oakland inspired you and brought those things out, and so it helped you go along your path.
Yeah, I think, one of the key things is that same curiosity and, joy in learning that I had, eventually, in my mid-30s, I finally started taking that curiosity and applying it to myself and really trying to understand myself and who I was, what I wanted, what sort of my purpose in the world was. And so obviously one of those things was exploring, coming to terms with my gender identity, but just in general, how do I want to kind of relate to the world? How do I want to be in relationships, whether romantic or just friend relationships? How do I want to show up for people and support them? And so that, all of that was very indirectly helpful when it came to Jeopardy, but it was important. I think that I had so much confidence in myself because I'd learned about myself that it made it a lot easier to not worry about all the peripheries when I was on there and not worry about being on TV or how I looked and things, because I knew myself. I knew that, I'm a pretty good person and people seem to like me, which is not something I believed for most of my life. And so that was a big part of it. I think that, I kind of alluded to before the programming, I think that goes along with the same thing of trying to understand, as I said. And so that's why I think you've seen, several of the Jeopardy champions have been from that field. And I think that's why that is, that it does require you to not just take things on the surface and kind of dig deep into them. So I think all of that's been good. And then I think Oakland, is just a place where people have more freedom to be themselves, certainly than Ohio was, or at least in the environment I grew up in. And so, I couldn't have done all that learning about myself if I hadn't felt free to express what I found out, whatever it was going to be. And living here, I knew that, there was some group of people in Oakland was going to be a community that accepted me no matter what I found and how I wanted to be, that there was always going to be a place for me here. And that's, along with the weather, that's one of the great things about Oakland. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Nico, and I'm in 6th grade. And I was wondering, as a past engineer, what do you feel about the automation of technology?
Yeah, I think that, one of the things about being in the tech industry is there's a lot of people that have kind of fanciful, like utopian ideas about what technology can do. And I think, one of the main areas we've seen that in is the sort of like using algorithms and machine learning and artificial intelligence, so-called, as if that they are somehow objective and divorced from our society and live in their own sphere. But, that's not true. Everything is, it's written by humans. It's using data of our human society. And so we see that these algorithms become racist. They become sexist. They, take all of the inequalities that are in our society and just perpetuate them because they were made within the society that we all live in. It is an unfortunate thing about people in the field I was in, that many of them have this belief that computers are outside of that and coding is outside of that. There's a lot of quotes about like, when you read code, you don't see anything about who wrote it, but that's just not true. And so, people in this industry give themselves like passes, and they say like, I don't have to, none of this is my fault. I have no responsibility towards any of it because I'm just in this like world of pure reason. And it's really important to remember in whatever field you're in that you're doing it in our society, and you have to always be careful that you're not taking the problems that we have and sort of importing them into whatever it is that you're doing.
Hi, my name is Lila. I'm a 6th grader, and my question was, so we watched some of your games, and we read a little bit about you, and we saw that you wore your pearl necklace that your girlfriend gave you to most of your games, and I was wondering if that you would consider that your good luck charm, or do you think it helped you?
I think it did help me a bit. Certainly, one kind of, silly way that it helped me, but I didn't have to worry about what I was, if I was going to change necklaces or was I going to wear it each time, because I knew that I was, and it was one less thing to think about. But it was, that was the first time that we had been kind of separate for, like a extended period of time, like 3 days each week. And so, that was hard. We're still early in our relationship, and we wanted to spend all our time together. And so it was really, comforting just to be like, she's there, she supports me. She wants me to succeed. She wants me to look good and all that sort of thing. So it was just kind of a way of like, if I started to get too anxious and too like worked up about, what was going to happen, how the game was going, to remind myself that at the end of it, I was going to go back to my actual life and my home, and that was what was important. And that's where I get my happiness from. Don't get me wrong, I got a ton of happiness from being on Jeopardy, and it was super fun, and it's given me all these things, but that's all, temporary. And that's all just like, it doesn't, if you're lonely, it doesn't make you less lonely. It could probably I would be more lonely now if I, was famous and having all these people, talk to me, but not really, know me and only know like this little part of myself and not necessarily want to hear anything else. So it was really important to know that I had somebody that I could count on and come home to that you know, she didn't care about Jeopardy. She really never watched it in her life, so she didn't care how I did, and that was nice. Yeah.
So everyone here has gotten a chance to ask a question. I just wanted to make sure, did you have a question you might want to ask? If not, we can go ahead and jump to the next question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't know, any of you planning to be on Jeopardy someday?
Well,
Go to the microphone, yeah.
well, it's not my dream, but when I was little, me and my grandfather, I'd come in his room. He'd be watching Jeopardy. He wasn't the brightest fellow, but he was having fun answering the questions at home. He would get a lot of stuff wrong, and when I would guess the right answer, he'd get upset. And he would always tell me, "Well, if you know it, then why don't you go on there?" And I was like, "I can't. I don't know everything." And I always thought that just because I didn't know anything, I couldn't do it. And he showed me that even though you don't know everything, you can still accomplish some things, because even though he didn't get a lot of the questions right, he was still having fun, and that was his accomplishment. So I would love to be on Jeopardy one day.
Yeah. No, and I mean, that's something that I learned, you know, like I said, I thought I'd win 3 or 4 games, and I wasn't being, you know, false modesty or anything. That's what I really thought. And, you know, it's so easy when you're watching at home to just notice the ones that you get wrong. I think a lot of people underestimate how well they would do on the show, and I think that that's depending on the type of person you are. Like, I'm the type of person that I tend to underestimate how well I'll do at anything. So that was a factor too. But yeah, it's in a way it's easier than it looks.
Yeah, I wanted to add that I can relate. I could never imagine myself in Jeopardy. Like, how are you able to get over that imposter syndrome, like, when you were actually there?
You know, it was something that I'd been sort of envisioning for a long time, and so it was sort of like the idea of me being there was something that I was used to. It was a familiar idea. When I was young, the one thing that I felt secure about was kind of knowing stuff. You know, I always had a really good memory. I always tended to, you know, I always did well on tests and this sort of thing, and so that was something that I could always like fall back on. I mean, you know, what's nice about it is, like, that's something that's graded, and so it's like, you know, like, I would get the test and be like, well, I guess I know all that stuff, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have gotten the grades that I get. So, you know, that was always something that I could kind of count on. And I mean, that's, you know, when I talk about, like, finally using it on myself, like, for all those years, like, it was a kind of a retreat from anything that was confusing and frightening, and everything like that was just like, you know, knowing world capitals, you know, didn't feel threatening and didn't feel odd. So, you know, that was always kind of my comfort zone. And so that, for me, that made Jeopardy, like, relatively easy to get a handle on. Yeah.
Does anyone else here want to answer Amy's question about wanting to be on Jeopardy, or we can jump to the next question as well?
Well, just like what normally happens, like, both my grandparents love Jeopardy. They always put it on, and then they always have Wheel of Fortune on, but they always are way more excited about Jeopardy. And I think they always, like, whenever one of us gets it right while we're there, they always smile. But I think we all know that inside that they knew that too, and that they always, like, love to watch Jeopardy not just because who wins, but also because, you know, they love, you know, being able to compete and seeing who wins. And then when someone else gets it right, you know, they're just happy for them instead of, you know, being like, wow, you got it right.
Why don't you kick us off with the next question?
All right. So my next question for you is, when you moved to Oakland, what was your expectations for our humble little town?
I knew shockingly little about the Bay Area at all growing up in Ohio. And, like, you know, for somebody that, like, you know, knows geography and that sort of thing, like, I just, you know, it just was, like, all vaguely California to me. And, you know, I thought things were closer together. I didn't know, you know, like everybody, I did not understand what weather to expect. You know, we always say, like, people come from Ohio or the Midwest or whatever, and it doesn't matter how many times we tell them that they'll be chilly. They're like, nah, it's California, it'll be great. So, yeah, I mean, I really, like, did not have much in mind. I think that, you know, what I knew was that, like, it had a lot of, like, cool stuff. We saw a really great play when we were here visiting. I was married at the time, so this is my ex-wife. Like, so we knew there was, like, some cool stuff to do, and we knew that we liked the sun and that it's very beautiful. and just in terms of the architecture, just in terms of like just plants everywhere, a lot of green around, all of that stuff. That was what we knew that we liked about it, and we figured we'd learn the rest when we got there. But yeah, I had very little knowledge, very little expectation of what it was going to be like.
So congratulations on your engagement. My question is, with gay marriage being legalized, how far do you think that we've come since 2013, and like how far do you think that like we can get, or yeah?
I think we've come unimaginably far. I can tell you, one of the reasons I didn't understand my identity for so long was I never heard of trans people until well into adulthood. It just wasn't a thing that anybody talked about. And obviously, to the extent that they existed, they were jokes, they were freaks, they were serial killers in Silence of the Lambs. All that sort of thing. So to imagine, that was the moment I really had. I got, invited to the White House, and just the fact that a trans person could be invited to the White House and that it would be considered a politically good move to do that is something that I would never have dreamed of, even just 5 years ago when I came out. And so, yeah, it's almost hard to believe. When I think about the environment I grew up in, when I think about 2004 when all these gay marriage bans were passed, and all this other stuff, and the idea that it's now just that it's just legal everywhere and it's accepted everywhere, it really blows my mind. And then I found out, doing this, being in the public eye, I definitely thought I would get a lot worse reaction than I did, and a lot more hate coming my way. And, there was some of that, and that didn't surprise me, but I was surprised by how little there was, and how, people from all over the country, all different, types of demographics, a lot of, old white people in the middle of the country were just like, yeah, you're great, I loved you, you rock on. It's really been gratifying to see how far we've come. I think that, right now, some of that's in danger, and that's very upsetting, and it's causing some real harm right now, to especially trans kids at the moment are the most in the crosshairs, sadly, and that that upsets me, but it doesn't discourage me, and it doesn't make me think any differently about the trajectory that we're on. I think that it's a backlash, and we need to fight it, and it's gonna, hurt some people now, and I hate that that's true, but it's not changing the course of where things are going. It's not gonna last.
Well, my question was inspired by a friend and what he told me, because I told my friends that I was going to interview you, and one of my friends was like, wow, that's really cool. And so he gave me this question. I kind of put my own twist on it. So I was wondering, as you're very smart, but a lot of times being smart is not seen as a bad thing, so everyone calls you a nerd or something. And especially who you are, being a trans woman, how do you block out what all those negative things people are saying to you, and keep in the positive things, especially when you're on Jeopardy, especially when you're famous and in the spotlight? How are you able to do that so it just doesn't get to you, and you're able to, focus on what you want to do?
Yeah, I can't say I've been 100% successful at that. It's hard not to, see some of that stuff, and you can't, I can't not be affected by it and not, take it personally a little bit. I think the thing that made it easiest was just again, how much more positive stuff I got than I was expecting. And then I just and I knew this was coming, I knew that when I started winning that there was gonna be some stuff online that I was not gonna like. And so I had, about, 3 or 4 weeks to kind of get myself ready for that, and, keep telling myself, don't read it, don't read the comments, let it go, just block people if you need to and move on with your life. And I wasn't completely successful at that, but, I just kept going back and reminding myself every time I fell into that temptation. And I want to talk too about what you were saying about being smart. I think that definitely, I realized once I was on Jeopardy and everybody's asking me, how are you so smart? How do you know all that stuff? And I would say a lot of things, which are true, which is that, I'm one type of smart, and it's not the only type of smart that there is to be. I'm not, there's plenty of other important types of intelligence that I'm not as good at as this just sort of like knowing stuff and remembering facts. And I would talk about I was lucky in how I was raised and all these other things. And I realized that I was saying all that stuff because I had gotten so much, hostility is overstating it, but a lot of, there was resentment, especially when I was around high school age, that, understandable resentment, that things that other kids were really struggling with, and it seemed to come so easy to me. And they, they didn't like that and would kind of be a little bit hostile towards me because of it. And so I just that affected me, and that I'd been feeling, kind of my whole life, almost preemptively apologetic for knowing the stuff I know. And it was only this going on Jeopardy and being asked the question over and over again that made me realize that, yeah, that's occasionally people are resentful, but that's not every time. Most of them are just they just want to know, and they want to know are there tips they can learn for themselves, or they just want to hear my story. And so I really have been trying to let go of that kind of defensive-ness about it, because it may have been justified when I was 15, but it doesn't seem like I need it anymore.
Richie, if I may ask a follow-up question?
Yes.
I was wondering also, as you were talking, how do you use some of that hate and negative comments that people give you to fuel you to be a better person, and how you use those to basically make you who you are?
Yeah, I think it's like I say, for the most part, I'm better off just shutting it out of my mind. But I will say that I definitely, there was, I got one message that was a direct Facebook message or something that said some, pretty upsetting things that was sent on Thanksgiving. And I was this person took time out of their Thanksgiving to try to make a stranger feel bad. And realizing that made me realize, this is just a person who I don't need to concern myself with, because if that's who they are, then I don't want to know them and I don't want to hear what they have to say. And so I think that, the one thing I can think it does do is it kind of causes you to think about, being mad online and, getting resentful, and it's easy to say pretty aggressive, mean things on, Twitter or wherever else. And so it's caused me to remember that and to be a little bit more reflective about it before I wanted to lash out at this person and several of the others that I saw. But it was just no, they're lashing out, they're expressing their anger in this unhelpful way, and I don't want to be like that, and I don't want to be them. So I think that's, if there was good out of it, I think that's what it was, yeah.
My question is, we were looking at your social media, and we saw that you posted some of your outfits on there. And I was wondering, what is the significance of showing what clothes you wear on your social media, and how does fashion play a role in your life?
Yeah, I think, the outfit thing wasn't my idea. It was a friend of mine. I don't really understand Instagram, and so a friend of mine was helping me out, and then people were just really interested in it. And I think what that turned out to be, I think, was just people looking for kind of connection with me. And so seeing that, just knowing where I bought my clothes and how I picked them out and things like that, people just enjoyed that feeling that they were getting to know me a little better. I think that fashion has been a big part of my life for the last 5 years, and it was, a torture part of my life before that. I think that it's been an adventure trying to figure out, what do I wear? What is my style? What do I like? What looks good on me? All these sorts of things. And I had a moment, a year or two in, I was shopping with a friend of mine, and she was like, oh, this looks like something you would wear. And I just had the realization that, oh, there are things that I do have a style now, and there are things that I gravitate to, I've learned, what sort of cuts I like on my body. I've learned, what colors work with me and what don't, all those sorts of things. And it's been, really gratifying. I think that women have a lot more freedom in their fashion than men do, generally speaking. I think that's starting to change a little bit. And so I was really, it was really like, I was really feeling very adrift at the beginning. Like there's so many different types of clothes I could wear and I didn't know which ones, but it was a lot of fun getting to know and getting to find out. I think that like fashion, you know, I was kind of raised in this kind of way. It was like, you know, vanity and like, you know, whatever else. And it was just like a bad thing to care about how you looked and whatever. But I don't think that that's true. I think that, you know, it's just a human instinct. We all want to look good. We all want to like put a good image out there to the world. And as long as we're not unhealthy about it, like, you know, I think it's just a great way that you can express yourself in a low-key way without like talking to people, but just know as you go through your day, you're expressing something about yourself just by the outfit you picked out for that day. And it can just give you a little more confidence to express yourself in other ways as well.
My question is a little bit like Mevo's question. I was wondering, like, what do you think we could do as like a community, like to make like trans identities like more open or like more accepted?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've learned that visibility turns out to be really important. I mean, all the stories I've heard about, like, my parents, my grandparents or whatever, like, they never really got it, and then they saw you on Jeopardy, and now they do. It's hard. I remember, like, one, you know, Trans Day of Visibility that's at the end of March, a few years ago. I was like, I don't want to be visible. I'm tired of being visible. You know, it's hard, you know, because being trans in particular, you're sort of like, you're out wherever you go in every setting you go in a way that isn't necessarily true for other identities. And I was just like, you know, I'm sick of people looking at me and imagining what they're thinking and what they're, you know, what they might say. But, you know, and, you know, it's sort of unfair in a way that, like, if you're trans, you kind of do have that burden. But, you know, at the end of the day, that's what changes people's minds, is getting to know a trans person. It's what taught me when I moved out here and I started making a couple, you know, casual friends that were trans and seeing that they were just people like anyone else, and that they weren't weird. I think that a lot of the resistance towards trans people is not about like it's immoral or like it's, you know, these other things. It's just about that people are like, that's weird. I don't like thinking about it. It confuses me and I don't like it. And so just showing them, you know, your not weird self, it goes a long way to change people's minds. And so like, I think that, you know, that's obviously what you can do as a trans person is be out there and be yourself and be visible and not kind of give into the temptation to hide and only stay in places where you feel most safe. And beyond that, I think it's like, if that's not you, then I think it's just important to sort of be visible in your support. You know, to not, if you're in an environment where you're like hearing, you know, hateful things or just ignorant things, to speak up in that moment, because that, you know, it's kind of the same effect. If people are like, oh, like, boy, the people around me don't seem to agree with what I'm thought about trans people, like, you know, they won't like that, it'll make them uncomfortable, and maybe they'll start thinking, and, you know, like, it's, you know, it works out just the same if they're just going along with it because that seems to be the, you know, popular thing to do now, like, that, I'll still take it, you know?
Before we jump to our next student question, I just wanted to give you the opportunity, Amy, if you wanted to ask another question to the students.
I guess I sort of wonder, you know, what brings you here today? What interests you about, you know, me, I guess?
Yeah, and whoever would like to popcorn style, just jump in.
Well, originally, I actually wasn't supposed to be here. My friend Chris was, and they asked me to come in. And when they told me that you were gonna be here, I was like, and that name sounds so familiar. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh yeah. And so I started just like checking out some of your old episodes of you on Jeopardy. I had the best time. It was super cool. I was like, wow, that person is really, really smart. Could borrow some of that intelligence. But I've always kind of like remembered who you were from just like watching Jeopardy with my grandpa, and I've seen you in Jeopardy episodes before. Yeah.
The first time I saw you was one of the times I was watching a Jeopardy episode, and I was like, wow, that person seems to really know how many of these questions, and it really interested me how that much knowledge you had. And then afterwards, I learned that you were a trans woman, and I was like, wow, they really go out and like normalize trans people without having to have other people taking in all their hate and changing themselves for all those other people. And I think that was what really interested me, and it really inspired me.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of credit goes to Jeopardy themselves and the people that produce it. They had no interest in making my being trans a thing. Like, they would never have brought it up if I hadn't. They were just like, you're just a person, you're just a contestant, like, and that's all we're worried about. And it was, and you could tell that they meant it, like, being on the set, interacting with them, they really didn't care. It wasn't something that was important to them, and I really appreciated that, yeah.
I was actually really curious, like, because, like, you're such an amazing person, like, just being, like, open and, like, you just try to normalize, like she said. And, like, you're also, like, you're not originally from Oakland, but, like, you're here now, and I wanted to see if, like, that played into, like, you being where you are, and, like, I was actually kind of curious about that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, I touched on that a bit, but, I certainly think so. I mean, it's sort of, it's hard to, like, point to specific things, but, I knew pretty much immediately once I moved here that I didn't really ever want to leave, and I knew that I just sort of found my place. And so I think that, in whatever way it is, like, that kind of, like, has to have had effects kind of throughout my life in maybe in subtle ways. And yeah, I think it's also, I've just been exposed to so many different people, so many different points of view, all that sort of thing. I think that has actually been super important in, just understanding the world better. There's, you can see a lot of the world in Oakland, and, certainly a lot more than you could in Ohio. And I think that's been really important to me.
I also remember when you first started becoming like a champion, and I was checking in with my grandparents, and my grandpa was like, "Hey, isn't Amy? Isn't she from Oakland?" And that's where you guys live. I was like, "Yeah, that's right." And we were all starting to get really interested, and it was really cool how like my grandpa remembered that. And so like the next time we went to go see him, like he was really like excited. He was watching Jeopardy, and so was my grandma. And basically they remembered to put it on, when Jeopardy came on for us, and it was really cool because we all were watching it. We were all paying attention, and we were super happy when you won, because we were like, yay, Oakland, and we were so happy how you were able to have your journey throughout Jeopardy, and we were just always there watching Jeopardy. Even if we aren't now, we were always there then, and it made it part of our daily routine.
Yeah, and I think that's something important too, like talking about that identification. I think that's, whether it's, just being from Oakland, whether it's like, being trans, whether it's whatever it is, it's always important to see people that you feel that connection with. It really is like, it's more true than it seems like it ought to be, that if you've never seen someone you identify with in a given position, in a given like place in society and whatever it is, you really do find it hard to believe that you can do it. And I think that it can come a lot of different ways. There's a thing called the Scully effect from the show The X-Files, that a lot more women got into STEM fields after that show started airing, because they saw this intelligent, scientific woman on screen. Even if she was like, fighting aliens or whatever, it's still just that one fictional character had a measurable effect on women entering those fields. So yeah, finding those little pieces of connection with people in different places is really important to getting yourself to where you want to go.
And Mevo, I actually just wanted to give you some space if you wanted to answer the question as well.
Yeah, I did. So one of the reasons, the reason why I wanted to talk to you was because I just, as Nico said, you're extremely smart, and we watched videos about you and how quick you answer your questions. But also, Oakland seems just, so small. So it's crazy that, anyone can just do something so big and achieve like something so amazing as you did. So I was like, I just can't miss the chance to talk to you, like, because it could be like any of us, and it's just, I mean, honestly, it's just amazing.
With that, we've come to the end of our time together. Amy, I actually, again, just want to thank you so much for your time. We know how busy you are. Just express your gratitude that you would come speak to Oakland Unified School District students. Thank you to KDOL here in the background as well for putting everything together. Thank you, everyone. Let's get a round of applause from the audience, right?